Hello and welcome to the Audrey Hall Show. I'm your host, Audrey Hall. Education is the topic today, spanning the local school district all the way up to decisions being made at the federal level and how those decisions will impact education. Joining me now is Dr. Robert Tremblay, Superintendent of the Framingham Public Schools, and welcome back to the show. Bob, it's great to have you.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me back.
It's been a while and so much has happened, and I really want to kick off by touching on a very broad issue which has to do with education nationally. I mean, we have a president of the United States who has hired a professional wrestling promoter to run the Department of Education, and then he says he wants to get rid of the Department of Education altogether, which obviously sends shockwaves throughout the entire education system in the country. So what do you think is going to happen to education overall, and more specifically, how do you think it'll play out in local school districts around the country? I mean, it's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, sure. We do watch it, like anyone would in the news. I think over the years, we haven't really paid all that close of attention to federal, Department of Education. Only because it's really got a limited role. Most of it's delegated to states. We pay much more attention to the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, for example. However, there is concern because the restructuring of that department could have a financial impact, and we do rely on that.
And that's what I think most people are concerned about, the grant money that's coming in for special programs, the recognition of teachers in certain ways, and what impact it'll ultimately have in the classroom.
That's right. There's impacts of what's called federal entitlement money. So we have grant money that's available as part of our school budget. And last year, I think it was when we were worried that we would have all of that money taken back, which would have impacted our school operating budget by over $5 million. In a sudden August moment. Where do you find that kind of money? And the answer is you don't. We've seen that sort of revert back to being fully funded. However, we're not taking our chances on this. In the next year's operating budget, we have started to absorb what we think may be some of those cuts at the federal level, or reductions at the federal level that we know we need to sustain in our operating budget. So whatever happens in the federal level remains to be seen, I suppose, but we're trying to plan for that rainy day.
Well, the Massachusetts Department of Education obviously is keeping a very close eye on this, I would imagine, and keeping all of the districts informed. And the money doesn't, though, funnel through them in many cases. It comes right to the districts, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah,
and but they're keeping an eye. I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt.
No, I was just saying, but they're keeping an eye on it and monitoring it, correct?
They are, and we are as well, separately. So we'll be watching the news media, and the state has some great advisors on the finances that are happening at the federal level, and we've taken some positions in our budget next year, anticipating that we'll probably have some reductions. Even we're not quite sure, and we're not quite sure when we'll know when those reductions will happen, or if they'll happen at all.
Well, let's touch on that a little bit. What areas do you feel you can kind of compensate for? Where are you focusing on?
Yeah, I think you look
adjusting,
at it.
So to speak.
I think with the budget, right, is that we have a declining enrollment, and not different than other urbans and other schools, honestly, across the country. And there's a variety of reasons for the potential decline in enrollment, or the actual declining in enrollment. So we're planning for that with those funds that are grant funded have to be in the operating. So which means if that's the case, what is in the operating that now needs to be reduced? And I think that's going to be the challenge. So we're looking very carefully at our enrollment, our staffing as it relates. If you have 600 plus students that are no longer enrolled in the school, one could argue that you need less staff, less administrators, less people to manage that enrollment, right? So that's the areas that we're starting to look at to adjust for what may come at the federal level. But you're right, it all intersects. Federal money, state money, local money is all in the one big pot of gold, as it were.
Well, when you talk about the operating side, are you talking about positions and salaries,
Sure am.
and how that relates to decline in enrollment?
Yeah, so you have staffing, you have administrators, teachers, and you have operating, you have materials, you have to balance that against operating expenses. Utilities are up significantly.
Right.
Costs to run transportation, fuel, all of those aspects. That's all part of the the big picture of the operating budget. So you're right, staff is part of that.
Staffing usually accounts for the largest part of the budget.
It does, yeah. Over 80% of the budget is on staffing.
Will you be looking at maybe asking for early retirements, or will you be leaving vacant positions open in your planning process, like trying to plan around it that way, or do you have any other specifics that you can share?
Yeah, so we've just really begun the budget process. We're looking at all of those options. The early retirement incentive has worked in some districts. It's a way to reduce staffing without having the unemployment liability.
Right.
And we're also mindful that a school decision for unemployment, if that were necessary, has an additional impact on the city, right, of the unemployment liability. And so,
because the city covers the cost of unemployment, the city budget,
that's exactly
not the school
right.
budget.
That's exactly right. So we are mindful of that. So for every position that you'd have to eliminate, for example, you'd have to eliminate essentially a position and a half to account for that differential. So what you just described is the preferred way. Are there retirements, vacancies through attrition, staff are leaving, then can we get away with not replacing those? But as you know, schools are very nuanced. When you have 600 less students, it's not as though they're not widgets, right? We don't have 600 less things and then less people that need to work with those. These are human beings that require very nuanced levels of instruction and skill. And so you can't simply take away a percentage of the whole without doing it really thoughtfully.
Right, and it's not like those 600 students are in one school, they're spread out, and so it doesn't give you just one place where you can make some cuts and you're good. You have to look at really working with a scalpel, so to speak, and instead of an axe, so to speak.
That's exactly right. And then you also don't want to take away opportunities for students, right? A lot of districts will go right to the arts or things that are not the core content, but we have a really rich arts curriculum. We have a really rich arts programming in Framingham. We wouldn't go there. I wouldn't ever recommend that, right? So where do you go to make these reductions? We have excellent course offerings at Framingham High School. Very rigorous and great, that help our students have an edge on college admissions. We don't want to reduce those. So where do you make reductions?
So the budget is around what, 183 million?
Yeah.
And the high school is the largest chunk in that budget, followed second by special ed, and then third by transportation. So when you're looking at those budgets, do you look at it by school? Do you look at it by program? Or do you just look at everything and try to say, okay, what's the best place for us to make some cuts? I'm just trying to hone in a little bit and say, how are you actually, what if millions are cut out of the budget? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think we look at all of those options, right? So I look at enrollment year over year, and we compare where were we last year at this time to this year at this time, building the budget. And then we look at that by school. If a school has a decreased enrollment, then we look at that relative to the school's decline.
Okay, so I would think then that the high school budget would be the most impacted, because that's the one school where every single student in the district goes.
That's correct, and the high school has the highest amount of student loss relative, because it is, as you pointed out, the largest school, and everyone goes there. So it's going to have that impact. Now, in the end, will that ultimately be how the budget shakes out as a relative percentage of the whole? That remains to be seen, right? So we don't know what's going to happen with the federal grant monies, the entitlement grant monies. Transportation, you mentioned, is another big driver in special education. Those are excellent points. Special education, we are really trying to do more in Framingham to have Framingham students spend their educational experience in Framingham and not be placed out of district. Those costs can be exorbitant, right into the tens of millions in total. So can we offer programs in-house? And we've begun to do that. In fact, we're at the Farley building, used to be Mass Bay. We now have a program there for 18 to 22-year-olds that up until this year, those students would have to be elsewhere outside of Framingham at a rate of tuition. By bringing that program in-house, we were able to save significant amount of money by having those students in-house. So we want to do more of that creative work, what space we have, and how to use that space in a way that saves money for the city, but also gives students an opportunity to be with their peers and in their own community.
Right.
So that's the approach. Our move to in-house busing is another example where that comes at a significant savings, even though there was a lot of speculation to the contrary on that. So now we have our own in-house drivers this year, and next year we'll have our own fleet of leased buses to work with.
Well, since you mentioned busing, that is something I wanted to talk to you about, because for many years it was an area of discontent and anger throughout the district that the busing was just so poor, and students were not getting buses, or they were being left for hours on buses, or buses weren't picking kids up at the right time, or they were making two different tours throughout the community in order to serve the students because there's not enough buses. So you went in-house with the buses, and you said there has been savings by doing that. Do you want to talk about that a little and how you see the improvements playing out?
Yeah, I think there's the cost savings side of this, which has been great. The biggest return on this investment and this effort is that we're getting more students to school on buses than we have in probably most of my tenure here. This is my 9th year in the Framingham Public Schools as superintendent. We've had 2 previous vendors. This is our first year in my term, in my tenure here, going in-house. We now have the highest number of bus drivers that we've had in any of that time. Our previous vendor was not even providing maybe 50 on a good day.
Well, that's a huge improvement. You're saying the highest number of buses in the entire 9 years you've been here.
That's correct.
Highest number of bus drivers.
Bus drivers, right.
So what do you attribute that to? I mean, there was talk about the fact that we weren't paying enough, the contractor wasn't paying enough. How were you able to do that?
So that's right. So the contractor was negotiating. You may recall there was a time that there was a potential strike, and we had to put the wagon wheels back on, as it were. But because they're now employees of the city with employee health benefits, higher hourly wage than they would have had through their vendor, NRT. I'm not ashamed to say their name because we're done with them. And so we have employees now who are really feel like they belong in the city. They feel part of a workforce. They feel part of a community.
But how did you get them?
We recruited them.
But couldn't the contracting company recruit them? Why were you able to recruit them in the first place?
So they wanted to work in the city of Framingham. They wanted to work here. They didn't want to necessarily work for that vendor. They wanted to be employees here.
That was the biggest difference?
Yeah.
It wasn't pay and benefits or anything?
But all of those things.
All of it.
Yeah, I think the hourly rate wage that increased on top of what they were being provided by their previous vendor, the health insurance benefits, but also just being an employee and feeling you're part of a team. And the culture, the morale, if you went to ask the drivers themselves, they would probably tell you that. We've seen it. I've been at the bus yard on many, many days this year, and it's outstanding to have these drivers with us.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and our kids are getting to school. We have more work to do.
Yeah, that was such a big concern about the kids not being able to get to school or being late to school just because of the buses and having that impact their first period class or the beginning of their day. So that's a big improvement, and I hope it continues that way.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to now next year having better buses. We're leasing the buses right now from the current vendor as part of the deal, but next year our buses will be air conditioned. It'll be a more enjoyable ride, hopefully a shorter ride, because you have more drivers, you have less time on the bus. So all of these things, and then getting students to school every day.
So you're saying you'll buy buses for next year?
So we have a 5-year lease on the buses.
Right.
So, but the current arrangement is a lease that we have with the current vendor that was providing the drivers and the buses. But since the drivers are now done, there are employees, but the buses are still from.
So
the
you'll
previous
continue
vendor.
the lease, but maybe they'll improve the quality of the buses.
But we've chosen a new vendor for the buses, so we'll have new quality buses.
That starts from the next school year?
That starts this coming summer,
Wonderful.
July 1. So we're very excited about it, and it was a big undertaking. Shout out to Angela Furtado, our Director of Transportation, Lincoln Lynch, and the team at the bus yard, and all of our drivers for making it work. There's a lot of concern and risk when you do something that's that remarkable. But our kids and families have benefited. We have more work to do. We know we have to get better at it, but we're getting there.
Well, that was a really big undertaking and a big challenge. So I'm sure there are a lot of satisfied parents and kids that this change has happened. And that it's working out, because there's always that level of uncertainty we think it'll work better, but let's hope that it will.
Our biggest worry is, as you can imagine, was what happens if we have less drivers than the vendor was providing. And now we've made this, that has not been the case.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. The other thing you mentioned that I wanted to talk a little more about is enrollment, because we're seeing enrollment dropping everywhere for a lot of reasons. Let's go deeper into that and talk about what you're seeing in the Framingham schools and why.
Yeah, well, enrollment declines do happen. Let me first say, we're going to talk about immigration in a second. I'm going to get there. But you do see a declining enrollment. Birth rate data generally is down in many communities. Less people are having less children than they were, 10 years ago. So you are seeing some of that. Some of our earlier forecasting was going to project a decline in enrollment anyway. We're obviously seeing that with much more sudden than expected, right? All right, why? And so some of that is we have a lot of our families that have either moved to surrounding communities for fear of immigration and customs enforcement, or they've moved to their home country, not feeling welcome here under the direction of the federal government.
When you say they've moved to surrounding communities, is it because the threat is more intense here?
I think there's a perception that the threat will be lesser here, lesser elsewhere, right? When you're in an urban community that's known to have a lot of immigration, there's concerns that maybe that's where people will be waiting. It's ICE and agents that are waiting to enforce that.
Have you seen any ICE agents at the schools this year?
No, I haven't. There's been a lot of, it's interesting, right? And I've had comments on this with even WBZ and talked with them. I'm aware that ICE is in communities. I'm aware people are alerting other people to ICE being and none of that's a surprise. We're trying to reassure our families. Well, we can't necessarily protect everybody from themselves and from the law enforcement. There has been no, in my time here, there's been no ICE activity at any of our schools. There's been no presenting of judicial warrants, which would be required to enter a school anyway. And the principals all know to contact me in my office if that should happen. There's not been any of that. I hope there never is. But that has not happened at any of our schools or at any of our bus stops. The rumor mill can spread, this misinformation and create this worry and panic. My biggest worry about this is that families are fearful to send their child to school because ICE could be there, or that something happens to them and they come home from school and the parents aren't there. That creates a different problem, and that gets to absenteeism, which is a huge problem for us because now our students aren't coming to school, they're not learning, they're not getting the meals that they often depend on at the schools, and now they're truant from school. And now we have to go to court. That's a different case altogether. So I'm trying to encourage families to send your child to school. That's important.
I'm sure it's reflected, though, also in parent involvement in the schools. Are you seeing that there's less involvement or parents not wanting to be near the school themselves other than drop off and pick up for that reason? It's
a little bit mixed on that. I have heard some of that, but so it's interesting. We have heard that there's some parents that are worried about coming out to a PTO event or a concert or a back-to-school night, but yet we're seeing better than ever attendance at some of those events. So what we're sort of hearing from families and what actually is in practice don't necessarily align with that.
Okay.
Nevertheless, there's a nice effort underway. I'll give you an example for conferences this year. Maybe not ideal, but we did get some feedback on this. I did a virtual conference option, right? So this year, conferences, so families didn't need to leave their home. They could interface with their child's teacher online. So there's no, you don't have to get out to the schools and make those.
I bet you had a much higher participation rate.
We did. I mean, I think there's some things that are not ideal, right? There's only so much time.
Right.
I think people enjoy like this face-to-face interaction instead of over a computer. I think people are still exhausted from COVID and doing that. But at the same time, when the meeting's over, there's no small talk. The meeting's done. The camera's off and you're moving on to the next conference.
Right.
But the limited amount of time. So the feedback was basically, for out of every 4 people, 3 people preferred having that virtual conference, including teachers and including parents.
There's a convenience factor that's so important.
There really is.
Yeah.
And not every family can get to the school for that conference. I mean, think about it. You're going to drive or somehow get to the school and then wait and then have a 10-minute conference and then drive.
And it affects the whole family usually.
The whole
because
family.
when one person has that commitment or has to drive, whatever it is, there's a convenience factor. And we can thank COVID. If we can thank COVID for anything, it's for the fact that we got a little more virtual reality in our lives. We got that.
We did, and you have that flexibility now, right? So a lot of our public meetings are offered remotely.
Exactly.
You can have higher participation in the community and government.
Right.
So I think a perfect balance of that going forward for the schools would be to have both options. If you want to come in person.
Well, good for you for doing that. I think that there's, you'll probably improve a lot of the communications with parents just by making it so much more convenient. So that's really good to hear. So what is the enrollment right now in the schools? You started the school year with just like 9,100, close to 9,100. What is it now?
Yeah, we're probably somewhere in the 8,400, 8,500. I don't know the number off the top of my head. But we've declined, about 640 students since around October of this last year. October, we use October as the date
So
stamp.
from one year to the next, you're down over 600.
Yeah,
just
over
about 600. That's a big drop.
It's a big drop, and it's going to have a financial impact because that Chapter 70 formula is predicated on enrollment.
Exactly. And how is that impacting, if many of them are immigrants and you have very large English language learning programs, how is that impacting those programs?
Well, so you still have a number of students who are, if they are in the community, they've chosen to stay here, whatever their status may be. There's still that learning need, right? So we have a predominantly multilingual student population. So that very nuanced need of education still is there. And then the students have left. But the state doesn't necessarily factor that into the Chapter 70 funding. So the concern we have as a school department and the city will have, of course, is 640 or so less students, even if we're held harmless, goes to what's called the minimum aid. So minimum aid means $30 a head. That's what the state gives you as a minimum aid increase over the money that you get. So that's like $283,000 extra. That's all. We've had years we had $16 million extra. $283,000 is a drop in the bucket in this case. So we have some real worries about what that number means and what the actual funding, because the need still exists in the school, right? We're still coming off of, we talked about COVID before, we're talking about COVID again. Students are just now sort of figuring out how to socialize and behave in classes, and we've gotten some of those behavioral concerns sort of managed. But what happens now if we lose staffing as a result of that? Does that problem now come back? A lot to watch.
There's a lot of moving parts.
It's an easy job.
You look at
Everybody wants to do it.
It's a lot of moving parts. And quite frankly, then, I'm hearing you say that the biggest impact on budget is enrollment numbers declining versus what's happening with the threat of losing some of the federal money. Even though that's a significant and valid threat, enrollment is a bigger issue with the budget.
It is. We're concerned about both. But we're building, you have to always plan for a plan B, a plan C. I love to live in the land of rainbows and unicorns. I love that place. But I'm also grounded in the reality that we have to make a budget work and not ask for more than we need. The last thing we want to do is come in a budget situation and take away from other departments who also need to run.
Well, the other thing is the people who fund the budget, the taxpayers, the property taxpayers, are also feeling it in their property tax bills, their water bills, their utility bills, their food bills, everything. And so, the whole pie is just having an impact on everybody, and schools included. So if everything goes up, it makes it very hard, puts so much more pressure on the people that are footing the bill.
It does.
So you've got a challenge, and you're in that job for a reason.
Yeah.
It's your job now to take all these moving parts and all these things that are changing and figure out how to make it work.
I had black hair when I started this job.
That's not uncommon. Well, that's not uncommon. A lot of people in these roles,
right? Yeah,
their hair goes gray pretty quickly. Oh boy. So we'll be looking at a lot of people over the years have talked about the fact that your district has high administration costs.
Yeah.
Are you looking at that as well?
We have. I mean, it's always the go-to move, right? It's like, oh, the administration's fat. You got to trim that down. I mean, yeah, I suppose there's always the potential for that, and of course we'll look at ways to do that. But if you have 640 less students, they're not being educated by the administrators. Right. Right. I mean, so
which is why people think there may be too many.
Well, no, but we've already reduced 20 in the last 2 years. Oh, yeah. I mean, not necessarily administrators, but people who are not student-facing, right? So over the last, people forget, memories run short.
Yes.
We've reduced these positions over the last 2 years, and that kind of goes away quietly.
You have to remind people.
You have to remind people.
Yeah.
So let me use your show as a reminder.
Yeah.
So yeah, will we continue to look deeply? Of course we will. But when you have 640 less students, you have an arguably need for less of other staff as well.
Do you think the enrollment will continue to decline? Are we say 640, but do you think it's going to be 800, 1,000?
Boy, I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you that answer. I don't. It's hard to know. I mean, we're seeing the decline pretty steady, and whether that snaps back in the next federal administration, that could be. So you have to be careful of that, right? We can't reduce so much that what happens if all of a sudden this is just an anomaly? Then we're underprepared or classes are oversubscribed.
Then you have to make a new case.
Enrollment's
back up.
Right.
Yeah.
So for now, I think it's important to be responsible and have a staffing need that's reflective, truly reflective of the student population. But again, it's nuanced, right? It's not as simply we're all doing the same thing for the same kind of student.
What about your reserves? You have reserves, right? But mostly for special ed?
That's it, because we've taken such a tremendous amount of risk on turnover savings of staff who are retiring and leaving. So we've taken the most risk in the last few years that we ever have in the budget. So we're going to continue to watch. We're going to continue to be mindful of being responsible consumers of the budget and not hitting taxpayers with costs that they don't absolutely need.
Do you talk to the mayor and the CFO in the city with you and Lincoln and beforehand about the number?
Yeah, there's always the number. Right?
There's always the number.
There's always the number. We do. I mean, and there's that push and pull, and the mayor's in a difficult spot because he's got to make sure that there's enough of a budget for the Department of Public Works and police and fire. And the last thing we want to do is be at the table taking sort of, I use the expression, although George King, who will watch this, doesn't like it, but I always call it like, we don't want to be pigs at the trough. That's the term that I'm going to use, nobody else. But we don't want to be those people. We don't want to be the reason why we have less first responders or the reason why we have sidewalks and roads that are ill prepared, right, for weather. We want to be partners, and I would say that the administration has done a good job of building that partnership. So yes, we talk with the mayor. It's an ongoing conversation. It's never a final conversation. So I will say that has been a very productive part of it. It doesn't always work for everybody's liking in the end. And ultimately, we present the budget to the school committee, and at the end of the day, it's their budget to present. We present it for them, but it's their budget to approve. We'll make recommendations, though, of course, on reductions.
Let's talk a little bit about student achievement and performance.
Yeah.
Because, the voters in Massachusetts said we don't want to have MCAS anymore as a criteria for graduation. How has that impacted the curriculum in the Framingham Public Schools all the way up?
Yeah, so for a lot of years, we had a curriculum that we had followed, and it was more sort of this ad hoc. We put it together, and now we have really scientific-based, what's called high-quality instructional materials, HQIM. These are evidence-based with proven outcomes for kids. We're seeing a good improvement on that. We're seeing good evidence. It's like a garden, though, growing the seeds. It's going to take some time to cultivate, right? But the high schools specifically now, because MCAS is still a thing. People think MCAS went away.
It's still a thing. It's just not the criteria for graduation.
That's exactly right. So when families say, well, you know what, MCAS doesn't matter. My kid's not going to take it. I'm going to opt out. There's no opt-out provision. That's not allowed. It's still required under the state. And when families choose to do that, or students don't participate, we actually get marked against. It's like a ding on your report card. It's like a demerit, because participation in MCAS has a direct correlation to district's achievement and accountability at the state level. So that's an important factor. So is in school attendance, by the way.
So how do you control that? You have people that just refuse to take it, right?
Yeah, you create an imperative and say, so people who want to see improvement, which all of us do, need to work with us as partners to ensure, let's show up every day at school so that our educators can educate, so that our students have the best possible shot of producing and achieving, and then let's take the test that shows the state that we are capable. And if we do all those things, our achievement will go up. But it's not just a school thing. It's not just a Bob Tremblay thing. It's in everybody committing to the whole. Parents have to be partners with us in education.
So what's the percentage of students that aren't taking it?
I'm not sure on how many students. I will tell you that when the vote came, there was a decline across the state.
Yeah.
It was more like, well, you've proven our point, we're not taking this test. I don't know the numbers, though, to be honest with you, of how many didn't, but we're just trying to be ahead of that as we come into this next round. What's going to be more challenging now is this competency determination. And so if you don't have MCAS as the capstone to graduate, what do you have? And so that's the part we're working through now, of having specific course requirements that you have to have met. And whether there's a capstone project or a portfolio to be reviewed, there's got to be something else to take the place of it. And that's what's being sort of evolving now as a result. Is
that just something that's happening in Massachusetts? Is it happening to all districts simultaneously where you're working on requirements together, or is it individual by district?
Yeah, it's individual by district, which is one of the challenges, but it has to go through and have an approval by the state. So there's still state oversight of that, but this is sort of nuanced by district. So there are some challenges with that. And then you have to find the time to do this, build this, and then ensure there's integrity to it. the last thing you want to have is someone get their high school diploma and they can't actually read it, right?
So exactly. So is this all tied now to overall curriculum development? And do you have a team working on overall curriculum development?
We do, and we've over the years, we've pared that team down to as lean as we possibly can. And so there won't be I'm not going to propose any reductions to our Office of Teaching and Learning staff, because that is the heartbeat of what we do, right?
Yeah, I would think curriculum development would become more of a priority now than it's ever been.
More than ever.
Yeah.
And so there's not a lot more places you can begin to look at the central office to make reductions, because that's what we do.
Right.
And so that is, to answer your question, yes, most of our focus professional development, the coaching support we provide to staff, getting into classrooms, having principals calibrate. Our principal team, for example, goes across different schools so they can ensure that there's consistency from school A to school B to school C. That's terrific alignment that we haven't really seen until the last couple of years. We've really doubled down on that achievement effort.
Well, that's important, and I think while you're building the curriculum for these competencies, you also have to look at changing times. I mean, how is AI in affecting education, and what are you doing?
Another great topic.
Whew. I mean,
you find all the good topics. That's why I like your show.
Thanks, Bob. I can't understand or I shouldn't say I can't understand. I can see actually how difficult it might be to teach in an era of AI, when everything is at your fingertips. How do you know? How do you adjust to that?
I think of it as a tool, and I think our students are pretty savvy as well. I think there's a fear among some that this is going to be a cheat to the system. When AI first came out in ChatGPT, and there's the idea that, write me a letter or whatever. I think there's that. I think if you learn to use it as a partner, like if I was writing something and I wanted feedback from somebody, I might hand it to you and say, Audrey, can you give me some edits? What do you think? But now I'm just giving it to a robot, right, to do that. But it's going to pull all this tremendous information and perfect grammar and perfect this, perfect that. I think you have to use it carefully.
Yeah.
But I think if you use it as a tool, and I think if our students, and they're learning this, to attribute this. So you can have a class and you can use AI as a brainstorming partner, but the essay is still your own. I think we're going to have this interesting reversion back to paper and pencil again. I think in the world of technology, I think we're edging our way back in this full cycle.
How so?
Well, think about it. If I want to know how well you write, I'm a teacher, you're a student, and if you type something for me, I don't know if it's you, AI, even if I use these tools that will filter and look for that, it's not necessarily reliable. But if you're pen and pencil, paper and pencil, writing for me, an introduction of yourself, I now know a baseline of how you write. And over the course of that year, I might do that again and see how you've improved in your writing. I think we're headed back to that for authenticity, because otherwise, but as a tool, I will tell you in my own experience, how can I apply AI in a meaningful way? I had an email that was all over the place of an update, and it was like 10 different pieces of information. I said, it's take me all day to sort this out and make sense of it. I highlighted it all. I put it into ChatGPT and I gave it a prompt and said, organize this information without violating any confidentiality into a 1-paragraph, brief summary, high-level overview. It did it in 10 seconds. I went through, made some edits, and I was done.
That's wonderful.
So you can
it can be a
apply
great
it that
tool,
way.
that's for sure.
It can be, but you have to be careful. At the same time, I worry about kids building relationships with chatbots instead of other human beings.
How does that work?
Well, think about it. I've heard, I haven't experienced this, but I have heard in the AI evolving world, and my wife and I have been married for nearly 30 years. I'm not on the dating circuit, but as I understand it, the future of this is that you have a agent that acts on your behalf, right? So you have two computers, and my computer knows my shopping history on Amazon and my listening history on Spotify. It knows everything about me, and if we're talking together, and your robot does the same thing. Our two robots are going to talk and see if there's compatibility, and then determine whether or not you and I should meet.
Whoa.
That's next level, right? I mean, it's
yeah.
So now you're allowing technology.
I haven't been exposed to to that yet. So
neither have I. I hope I never am.
Yeah.
So that's what our kids though are facing.
Yeah.
That's their world.
But the point that comes to my mind is that's why the curriculum has to be so different now than it ever was in the past.
Absolutely right.
Because with everything at people's fingertips, why do you need to spend a month in 5th grade learning about volcanoes? Tell me, you don't. Okay, that should, so what do you really need in the world today with all this new technology and all these new tools and just the amount of information that you can get so quickly? It's not what it used to be.
It's not. It's the collaboration. It's this conversation. Can our kids have a meaningful conversation? Can they collaborate? I think you're going to see a bigger push for that. It's going to be teams. When people are hiring, they're looking to know that you have these technology skills. They want to know if you can be part of a team.
Well, you'll see in generations now that younger generations who've grown up with phones, cell phones, really don't have conversations the same way other generations do.
It's true.
And don't even feel comfortable having some of those conversations because it's not what they're used to. And many of them had less of that when they were at a certain age during COVID.
Right.
There were kids who were in college and high school during COVID and were in isolation for a couple of years, pretty much didn't have any interaction during key developmental periods in their life. And that's still playing out in who they are now and how they're fitting into the world. We and you have a big role in helping them adjust, change, just fit in better and develop what they need to move forward. And how do you do that? I don't know. It's a big job.
You could just ban the phones, I suppose, but that's who's going to manage that?
Yeah.
And that's a conversation.
Are you banning the phones in school?
Right now, we have a more, I would say, casual approach to it. Out of sight, out of mind. Put your phones away, get into class. If your phone's out, we'll probably take it, put it in a little hotel, the little shoe tree, whatever. But there are schools, right, that you have them locked into these pouches, these yonder pouches that you can't access. And then you're going to have parents, well, what do I have to reach my child? Well, I don't know, I grew up in cell phone free era. Everything was fine, right? So there's that worry of, I would say, sort of over communication with your children.
Mm-hmm.
You can always call the school, and the school can always call the classroom, right? That still exists. So I think that it's going to be a difficult one to sort of police, and people game the system. How many kids actually take their yonder pouch and put a calculator in there or some other phone?
There's always people gaming the system, but the bottom line is that it's also a disruptor. It's a behavioral issue.
It is.
I mean, you have students that are bullying other students using their phones during the school day. It's not just about being able to talk to your parents. Most kids use their phone the least to talk to their parents, even though that's why they say they have it, right?
That's a good point. But even in my meetings, I'll have meetings with my own team, and it's a norm in my agenda. No technology.
Yeah.
We don't bring laptops. We don't bring phones.
Yeah.
We're eye contact, because the meeting is actually much more efficient. People think they can multitask, and you can't.
Yeah.
You're not focused on the one thing you should be paying attention to.
So will that ever change in the Framingham schools? Do you think you'll get to a point where you won't allow the phones, or do you think you're staying away from that on purpose? Which way is it going here?
We are looking at it. There's a lot of research evolving from this. I think generally people are liking the idea.
A lot of schools are doing it.
A lot of them are. I think it'll be easier to have some state legislation behind it, which I know is in discussion as well. Will it be? I think, for now we're managing it sort of case by case, but I do think that phones not being in our way is going to help us to really do a lot more.
They're not really phones anyway. They're massive computers.
They're computers, right.
And cameras.
And what about staff? You have to be role models for that. What about administrators? We can't be on our phones.
I can't give you my phone.
You almost feel this pulling energy. I leave my phone in the other room.
Yeah, it's a tough one. You've got to manage a lot of different things and take all these situations into account.
Yeah.
I know. So, well, how are the schools? Let's talk for a minute about the school buildings themselves. We talked about the guts of the school, but let's talk a little bit about the buildings and where we're going with the buildings. There was talk throughout this last election cycle about school buildings needing roofs that were in repair. There was talk about new schools. What's on your agenda for capital investment in schools, whether they be improvements, repairs, or new schools?
Yeah. Well, we like the projects where we get money back.
Right.
Love those, right?
Right. Through maybe the School Building Association. Or
yeah. So
but you never get it all back.
No, it used to be. I've been at this for a while, but as a superintendent 19 years ago too, and you used to get 85 cents on the dollar, 90 cents on the dollar. Now you're getting 50 cents, 60 cents on the dollar because there's so much need. Buildings are deteriorating across the Commonwealth. So yeah, there's this conversation around a new school. It's a little bit conflated. You have this sort of new school, the Hemingway School, what's going on? Let's talk about what the problem is. The problem is that most of our students live on the south side.
Right. It's always been that way.
And once upon a time, before me, there used to be schools on the south side, and now they're medical offices and housing and all of those things, but they're not schools anymore. And most of our schools are on the north side. So we're busing kids literally across Route 9 every day to go to and from.
Did you ever look at it by the numbers, like what the actual numbers of students on the south side are versus the north side?
Oh yeah, and I don't have that number off the top of my head, but we looked at not only the numbers, but we mapped it. We actually have a visualization to show where students actually live relative. And if I did a scatter plot of a school, it doesn't matter which one, you would see that there's a dot everywhere across the city of Framingham, north of Route 9, south of Route 9, everywhere. That's really not efficient at all. I mean, I talk to any neighbor in any neighborhood, they're going to tell you they have 8 or 9 school buses rolling in every morning.
Which is also directly related to the school choice program.
It is, but what's the reason for that? People wonder.
Because there's no neighborhood schools on the south side.
Right, and so what's the reason for that? Because in 1996, there was a rezoning, a voluntary rezoning effort as a civil rights resolution to a civil rights violation about having students of one classification, we'll say, or race. You can't have that. It's a civil rights violation.
The school choice program was instituted in order to racially balance the schools.
It was voluntary, but they did it.
But it really didn't work.
It worked for, I talked to Gene Thayer about this years ago. His first tour of duty here. And he said, yeah, it worked for about a year, and then, like we talked about before, people gamed the system. And now families are getting their 8th or 9th choice school in the school choice model, when even when I first started here, they were getting their 1st or 2nd choice.
Really?
It's broken. The whole system is broken. We have buses going everywhere we don't need them to go.
Yeah, you'll have 4 or 5 buses at one bus stop. It's ridiculous.
Unnecessary. We should be able to reduce
kids at
that
school
cost.
at bus stops don't even know the kids that live next door to them. They don't hang out with them. They don't go to the same school. Are you going to get rid of that program?
You know, in previous superintendents, they've tried to eliminate school choice. You know what's happened to those superintendents? Did you follow those stories?
Are you going to tell me they're all gone?
They're all gone. So I have a feeling when we make choices like that in here, it's going to be time.
When's the end of your contract? That's when school choice can end?
Don't worry, there'll be a lot of people helping me pack too. That'll be no problem. And that's okay. That's what I'm here for. But I think we are in the process of evaluating that model. I think in a perfect world, wouldn't it be great for kids to be able to go to school with their neighbors and have a sense of community and not have to take a bus everywhere?
Right.
They can walk to school or get rides to school. So we need something, this sort of new school concept. We envision a South Side school.
Yeah.
That is needed. Now, that's the cart before the horse, though. The first thing to happen is, because we are partnered with the Massachusetts School Building Authority, is to say, okay, well, what school is up for consideration? That happens to be Hemingway. It's the oldest. It's the one most in need of repair. It's not an unsafe building, but it happens to be next on the list if something needs to be done to that. You have site restrictions on that property. Environmental, you can't just take the building and build another story, because you have to knock down the whole building. If you knock down the building, where do you put the students? So there's a real need, there's no place for them to go. So this conversation about a South Side school sort of solves the 2 problems. You have a new school on the South Side to support.
So the South Side school replaces Hemingway?
That's correct. It wouldn't be. There's not a model to have a 10th school.
Okay.
But it gets a little bit tricky, right? Because it's called the Hemingway Project, but it's not exclusive to Hemingway.
Okay, I thought it was 2 schools, so I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah, but
that's a lot of money. Even there was $100 million for the Fuller School, right? Close to that, 80 something.
Yeah. Now look at the price of what did they build a school in Lexington for? I don't know. Was it $600 million? I don't know. Yeah,
Did they really?
It was whatever's being proposed. It's crazy money now to do these. So no, this is still a 9th school, and in the location, which would allow us hopefully, right, to then look at rezoning our district. So it doesn't just affect Hemingway. It's really a consideration of the entirety of the district.
What would you do with Hemingway then? It would just go away?
No, I mean, I know that's a sort of a political hot potato up there in that region of the neighborhood.
Well, the reason I would say one of the reasons is because Hemingway was always like a top list school for people in choice. They always felt that it was one of the top schools.
Oh, for sure.
There are many North Side schools, and I imagine students would be dispersed amongst those.
Absolutely. And closer to their home, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you have Potter Road, you have King up there, you have other schools.
You had people coming from South Framingham to Hemingway. All over the district because of school choice. It wasn't like it was just a neighborhood school, obviously.
But the way it was billed was, and I understand it, right? So you had King at the time was sort of the STEAM school, and Barbera's your dual language school, and Stapleton's your environmental school.
They had themes.
At the end of the day, shouldn't every kid, every student have the opportunity to have STEAM?
Oh, sure.
And
Absolutely.
language?
Absolutely.
And science?
I think they did that because they wanted people to choose the schools and have a reason to choose it other than location.
Right.
So
there's a magnet model.
Yeah.
And I get it, but it's time to reevaluate that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't do traffic any favors.
No.
It doesn't do us any.
It makes traffic in the city worse everywhere.
Absolutely. Can we run less buses maybe? Hopefully. So that's part of this study that we're doing right now, and it's actually is part of this building project.
So working with a partner as a school building association, and having that designation of it being a South Side school, are you still looking at the Bethany property, and is there a time frame that you think this would actually happen in?
Yeah, so the Bethany property, what was done years back was a pre-feasibility study that actually took a look at all the possible places a school could exist. There's about 11 of those or so. But the Bethany property, which the city now owns, is a very viable location. Would not require necessarily a lot of site work there.
The city owns the Bethany property now?
Yes.
When did that take place?
I think they bought it a couple of years ago now.
Okay.
Not sure the exact date on that. And Hemingway would allow us, the existing Hemingway building would be, allow us to expand pre-K at that site. It would still be an education. I wanted to go back to an earlier point I made, because I want to make sure we talk about that not being a site for us to build apartments or do something else with. It's still going to be for education. We just won't be able to meet the educational need of what we would need on the south side.
So you see that as a pre-K?
I see it as a pre-K option for us on the north side. So Bethany would be the ideal location for where we site that school.
How big would it be, and what grades would it have?
So we're in the process of determining that right now for the design enrollment. Depends on whether we put all pre-K there and all K there, or we have some combination. So we're in the process with our project management team, the school building committee, to determine that. But if a new school were to be built, approved by the taxpayers, and at Bethany site, we would anticipate that school opening the 2030-2031 school year, 30-31.
And I would wonder if it would make sense, because of what you said about busing all over the city, and that ultimately everyone's going to end up at Framingham High, but wouldn't you want to be able to keep them closer to home for K through 8?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, right? So you still have a up to grade 5 structure. We wouldn't change up the configuration. You still have your 6-8 middle schools. You could make an argument to carve out a pre-KK, which would be like an early childhood model, and then have 1-5. Depends on that configuration. The advantage of having a declining enrollment is it could allow you to also expand pre-K at a variety of school sites. That would now give you not only just K to 5, but pre-K to 5. And we've begun to do that. We've expanded at Harmony Grove, at McCarthy, for example. And so those are great efforts underway. So
you wouldn't want to see a K through 8 on the south side. You don't think that would fit into the structure of the overall Framingham School District? Okay.
I think that would be
K through 5.
K5. You keep that K5 or pre-K5 is what we're proposing.
Or pre-K5. Well, that seems to make sense. How do you feel that the overall reputation of Framingham Public Schools is faring these days?
I think it depends who you ask.
Well, that's always the case, right, with any reputational question. But in general, from the outside looking in, do you think that Framingham is attracting people to the school district at this time? Do you think that it's not? What is your feel for it?
I'll tell you, we have schools from around the state who visit us regularly to see about our registration process, the way we bring students onboard them here at our Welcome Center, for example. Our dual language opportunities that we have for students is also very attractive. So I would say, by and large, people are very attracted to Framingham. Even a lot of our educators who choose to come here. We're not as attractive as Boston for a couple of reasons, right? We lose staff to Boston.
Or Wayland. Right.
Well, we lost some of our Spanish immersion teachers, as you know, to Wayland in the last couple of years. We have, and then back to Spain, actually. We have a lot of our staff that are on visas. And so I think, let me just answer the question this way. If people are concerned about perception versus the reality, they need to take the time to ask the questions. But people will rush to social media chatter or rumor mill. But you say, well, we've lost all these teachers to Wayland. Have we? We've lost some, that's true. We also have lost some to Spain. We lost some to Boston. We lost some through immigration, through visa status, right? So there's a variety of nuance to those answers. But generally speaking, Framingham is this amazing urban-suburban world that's actually like reality. And a lot of the surrounding communities are not.
It's a microcosm, really.
It is.
It is. It's a microcosm.
And it's been known long before I was here, probably long before a lot of us, that Framingham had this amazing core sampling of the real world. How many students do we hear coming back from college saying, I'm with all these kids at school and they knew nothing like I knew. They're successful in school because that is the real world. And they're coming from these smaller communities that are whatever they are.
They leave Framingham having a worldly experience.
And they're successful.
Is what you're saying.
They're really
yes.
successful doing it. So I think people should be more proud and less critical than they are. We all need to know that our academics need to improve. Every school, probably most school districts do, right? And so we're all committed to that. But I think we need to take time and step back and say, look at the opportunities that we provide our kids, and there's a tremendous amount of success that we enjoy.
Well, I think it's such a complex district also. I mean, when you look at it and you look at all the things that, all the balls in the air at the same time, I think asking the right questions is a good answer because, in another district that's much simpler and, not obviously the more complex it is, the harder it is to understand. So asking the questions, like you said, is really important for people to dig down a little deeper and find out what's really going on and why is something the way it is, and let's not rush to judgment when this is a very complex district, accommodating a lot of needs and a lot of people. So, I get that point. I just hope others do. It's hard to explain to people. It's hard to ask people to go deep.
It is, and I appreciate you asking the question.
Yeah.
None other communities are necessarily feeding everybody their lunch and their breakfast every day, in addition to making sure that they're protected from immigration.
Mm-hmm. Big difference.
Big difference.
Very big difference. Before we go, I have like a minute or two left. I just wanted to ask you about your own personal initiative right now, because I did hear that you gave up your car and that you are using nothing but public transportation these days. We have about a minute left, and I'd love to just give you a chance to talk about your personal challenge to yourself on this.
Yeah, thanks. I moved to Boston with my wife. We're empty nesters now, and I take the train, commuter rail every day. I'm a big believer in sustainability as well. I take the train every day from Boston to Framingham. It's great that we have a commuter rail stop here, and then I navigate my way on foot and on the MWRTA. So I'm a frequent user of that. It's helped me to help families to navigate the bus system here. It's also helped me to identify challenges for our kids and our families getting to certain schools. And we don't have time now for me to name all of those, but I am working very closely with the MWRTA. They are very responsive. And having someone like me ride the bus, it's great. I'll just tell you, and most days, I'm riding the bus to school from the train station. I'm on there with parents, with young children, and with some teachers on there with their scooter as they go. And so you have this microcosm within a school bus, within a city bus, of everybody going to work and being successful without having to drive. So it's doable, it's complicated. You'll often see me walking around. I do have a driver's license. And so in case
you must get your steps in every day.
I do. I walk about 6.5 miles to 7 miles a day.
That's fantastic.
On average, some days 10.
And you just did this to give it a shot and...
Yeah, I mean, against the world, I guess. People are like, that's not going to work. I'll tell you, there's some days that I'm outside.
Have you endured a winter yet? Is this your
first winter
coming? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I wear about 6 layers on these colder days. But what do they say? There's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothes.
Well, that's a good point. I haven't heard that one, but it does make a lot of sense. Anything else you'd like to add today before we end?
No, just to say thank you again for the opportunity. I always enjoy our conversations. They go by faster than any other hour I could spend.
They really do. And I think that people always find the things that you have to say so informative, because not everyone gets to talk to you directly, and to hear directly from you in depth on these items is very, very enlightening. So thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. You're always great to have on the show.
Oh, thanks. And everyone wants to reach out and have a chat with me about any topic of interest, I'll always make myself available.
Well, okay. Your phone's going to be buzzing.
Let it buzz. I like to get my coffee right downtown.
Thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate having you here today.
Thank you.
So I'm always thankful when Dr. Robert Tremblay comes to the Audrey Hall Show, and I just want to say I hope that you appreciate it as much as I do. So special thanks to Dr. Robert Tremblay for taking the time to be here. I leave you with this food for thought, a quote by Edward Everett, and he said that education is a better safeguard of liberty than a standing army. Give it some thought. Education and the importance in our society and our world today. Thank you so much for tuning into the Audrey Hall Show, where you will always learn something new.